Hello. Today we're going to go over the Opfor Night Solutions weatherproofing service for the BNVD-1431 Gen 2, not to be confused with the Mark II. Now, to be honest, out of the box, it doesn't seal that well. However, after it's been serviced properly, it actually seals quite well. And I believe that as a responsible builder, you should be sealing it. There are a lot of leaky 1431 builds going around by builders that haven't built them properly. So I'm making this video so that other builders can fix their issues with customers that they already have and start building them properly, because I don't like the idea of these non-weatherproof 1431s floating around that might have problems in the rain or snow. So the main issue here, there are three sources of leaks. One, sometimes they leak from the gaskets. So you have a gasket here for this pod, gasket here for this pod, and then you have a gasket here for the battery compartment. The second leak, which is one that's been misidentified by other builders because they didn't do a proper water tank testing like I did, is this pin leak right here. So because of this pin's proximity to this O-ring right here, other people assumed that the leak was actually faulty joint O-ring right here, but that's not the case. The O-ring is usually fine. The main leak is this pin because in the manufacturing process they had to drill a hole on the inside here so that they could route wires up here and into the bridge. And they drilled the hole from here because you can't drill from the inside out, so they had to plug it up. They just didn't plug it up very well because it's just a plastic friction fit one-way pin. And you have the same thing on the other side. And then the third leak is actually one you would never guess, is actually the power button right here. You can tell they tried to seal it because you can see a little bit of some kind of sealant there, but it's usually sealed very poorly, and when you try to purge it, it actually overcomes the sealant anyway, so you got to redo that. But those are the 3 points that you have to seal in order to weatherproof your BNVD 1431, and I'm going to show you how to do it. We're going to start off easiest. So we're going to seal the gaskets first. To start off, you need some grease, a 1.5mm Allen key, and a Q-tip. And I also recommend getting my upgraded screw sets. So you start off by removing these 6 screws. And people say that these screws suck. I agree that these screws kind of suck. But to be honest, if you strip them, you also suck, because if you use a properly sized driver, they almost never strip. From the factory, these things are pretty dry. It's pretty easy to seal it. Take some grease, and you just fill the channels. Once you filled the channel, put the gasket back in. Make sure it's fully in the channel so you don't damage it when you close it. But also make sure you have a layer of grease on top of the gasket as well, so that it seals on both sides. Doesn't need to be a thick layer, there just needs to be a little bit there. Great, so now this bottom gasket is sealed. You can wipe off the excess grease, and you're good to go for this part. Next part, these gaskets here and here. Same deal, except it's just 4 screws. You have to remove these 2 screws first, and then to access the next pair of screws, you have to turn the unit over. And then when you're turning it over, make sure you hold it not by the pod here, but support it from here. Otherwise you can damage your pods because you only have these two screws holding it in place. Once it's greased up, same deal. Whoops, I'm an idiot. I almost put it on backwards. Put it back on, and I recommend using upgraded screw sets so that people won't complain in the future that you used sucky screws. Alright, once you've sealed the 3 gaskets, we are going to take a look at sealing these 2 pins right here and here. So what you're going to need: Phillips head screwdriver, a metric M4 tap, preferably not one that's tapered. Something like a bottoming tap would be good because you're not trying to go too far into it to thread it properly. And then you want 2 metric M4 short set screws that you can seal with. You're also going to need either thread locker or super glue. I actually just use super glue because it sets more quickly. Oh yeah, you'll also want to use a solvent so that you can clean the surfaces for the glue to seal better. So to start off, what you have to do: flip your unit this way. I'm actually going to remove the battery cap because it'll be easier to deal with. Flip your unit this way and remove these 2 screws. These 2 are the bridge tension screws. I end up replacing them anyway with my upgraded screw kits. So now that these are out, you're going to want to use a small flathead and go in here and just gently, while you're holding the pod down, pry up until it releases, like that. You want to do the same to the other side. Okay, so as you can see, this side here, it doesn't actually seal against anything. There's nothing in there. This plug is just for friction, so you can adjust the tension for folding up and down. What you're going to want to do, though, is with this pod, gently rotate it down. Here you can see the O-ring that doesn't actually leak, but people say it leaks from there because of the proximity to this pin. Pull it out because you don't want to stretch the wires too much. You're going to want to take a tool inside and find that pin, one-way pin, press it, and it'll shoot right out. Then you're going to want to do the same thing to the other side. Gently remove the pod without messing with the wiring, and then push outward and pop that pin out. This little one-way pin. So what you want to do after that is take your M4 tap. I'm going to use it with a drill because it makes it a lot easier. And what you want to do is make absolutely sure that your wiring is not in the way. Take your tap, line it up, and slowly cut some threads. Check the inside when you've gone deep enough, and back it up. We're going to do the same thing to the other end. Make sure the wires are out of the way. Line up your tap. Alright, once that is done, I forgot to mention that it's very good to have duster gas for this, so that you can go from here and blow all this stuff out. Then what you want to do, take another Q-tip and you get some solvent. Alcohol is okay. I actually use acetone. Be very careful with acetone because it's a very, very strong solvent. And just make sure you clean that out on both sides. Try to get the thread a little bit, but ultimately you just want to have a clean surface so that your glue can stick. So now, take your set screw and get some glue. Put a very small amount of glue on the thread inside the pod. Not much. And then you want to also put a little bit of glue on your set screw. And then what you'll do is you just screw it in. Try to screw it in so that it's flush, and then just leave it. Same with the other side. Just a little bit of glue here. Actually, I need a little bit more. Just a little bit there. Take your other set screw and get a little bit of glue on it, on the threads, so that they can seal. Alright, now once that's done, you want to leave it as is and let the glue set. Alright, so it's been a few minutes. The glue is pretty much set. So what you need to do then is take some solvent and from the inside clean off any excess glue on the front right around here, because that's where the O-ring is going to sit. And you want to make absolutely sure that you don't have any glue residue in that area, because that will affect the seal. And then what you want to do, take some grease, and it doesn't hurt to just add a little bit of grease to these O-rings before you put them back in. And then one more thing that's optional is I actually like to add a little bit of grease on these two joints here. It doesn't actually help with the seal or anything. I just find that having grease at these joints makes pod operation a little bit smoother. And then you can put these two screws back in. Personally, I use my own upgraded screws just because. The other thing that you can do with solvent You can see that for me, since I use glue, some of the glue, there's glue residue on the outside. Once it's completely set, you can take another Q-tip, use your acetone, and you can go around and clean up the excess. It might take some time, but it will make it look a lot better once you're done. Alright, so the last part that you want to seal is this power button right here. What you're going to need is a 1.3mm Allen key, a flathead screwdriver, and some thread locker. So all you do is you're going to see that there's some kind of sealant here. You got to pry that off. It kind of sucks. And then it'll reveal a 1.3mm hex key right here in the middle of the button. What you need to do is hold the 1431 by the power button so the power button can't spin, and then hope that you can remove the hex key. This hex key does kind of suck, and sometimes they strip, and being a 1.3mm hex key, if it strips, you're kind of screwed. But don't worry, if it strips, there's still another way around it. So all you do in this case, remove that screw, get some thread locker, put that thread locker on that screw. I actually hate this thread locker because as soon as it comes out, it's always a big glob. I fucked up. That's a big glob. Get the thread locker on the screw, like so, and then you put it back in, and that's it. This is the third leak that you have to seal, and it's honestly just a little bit of thread locker. You can use a Q-tip and clean off the excess. And once that sets, you should be good to go. Now, if for whatever reason you're unlucky and this screw stripped on you or you were unable to remove it, you're still okay. It's just a little bit more annoying to seal it. You just have to use some kind of sealant or epoxy or glue and go over top of that. So I am actually going to use epoxy. I'm going to mix that right up. I also like to use epoxy anyway, because that silver screw, after you remove the original sealant, it kind of sticks out a bit, and I don't like that. So what you're going to want to do is take some of your solvent, clean that surface, and then you take some epoxy, and if you take a close look at where that screw is, you see sort of like this little island in the center, and you want to apply the epoxy so that it's on that little island in the center so that it looks neat without getting it everywhere else. So those are the three areas that need to be addressed in weatherproofing the BNVD-1431 housing. Any responsible builder should be doing this, and I hope this video was helpful to you. So what difference does this all make? Here we have an original BNVD-1431, as it would be if you purchased from another vendor. There are a ton of units just like this floating around the market. And here we have a BNVD-1431 that has seen the Opfor Night Solutions weatherproofing service. Right here we have the PSI reading. We're going to apply the vacuum pump. You'll notice that it's struggling just to get to -4 PSI, and you'll see why. This is what other people are building right now because they're not doing these mods. This is what every unit should be like because responsible builders should seal their units. Right now we're getting to the point where the vacuum pump is starting to struggle. But you'll see that it holds pressure quite well. There was a very slow leak, but this is actually around the same speed that this purge unit itself loses pressure, and this is what you would expect from another water-resistant housing like the PVS-14. So I'm very confident in being able to say that after these modifications, a BNVD-1431 can be considered water-resistant and weather-resistant. I have used these units extensively in rain and snow, and I have never had a single issue. I wouldn't go diving with them, but this is more than good enough for most applications. Again, if you're building these units, please make sure that you're sealing them before they go out. I hope you guys found this video to be informative, and thanks for watching.